In the Pursuit of Truth, Dowley. Chapter 9, Unexpected Ending of the Cultural Revolution. Lu Yu, a famous Chinese poet in Song Dynasty, has the following popular line. Trudging through endless mountains and rivers, one might doubt whether there is a path out. The 10 years of Cultural Revolution from 1966 to 1976 incurred many twists and turns, and along the way, quite a few dramatic incidents. Those who lived through the upheaval can hardly forget it. One shocking turn of event was the so-called Lin Biao incident of September 13, 1971. Although the Cultural Revolution did not officially end until 1976, in the minds and hearts of the people, after the incident, the destructive Cultural Revolution was already morally bankrupt. None of the average Chinese had a clue about what might be going on within the party inner circles and behind the secret political curtains. It was the time after the Sino-Soviet border conflict in the Treasure Island. Mao warned the whole Chinese population to be prepared for war. In DR's factory, people were working on dugouts built with concrete and steel beams. The construction was delayed many times, as the water kept seeping in. "Is this a bomb shelter?" someone asked. "Yes," the guy overseeing the work said, tongue-in-cheek. "But I will not crawl in. This will not stand a chance." Then the factory launched some field training, and workers stopped production. They formed squads and platoons and marched to the suburbs of Shanghai, walking 30 to 40 kilometers a day for weeks so that they could be physically and mentally ready for any foreign invaders. By early October, DR reached a suburban tractor factory for a stop. The political instructor took out Mao's Red Book and led the crowd to recite his quotations, and it ended with the shouting of slogans to salute Chairman Mao and Vice Chairman Lin. Afterwards, DR bumped into a friend working there who pulled DR over and whispered in his ear, "Do you know Lin is dead?" Lin was the official successor of Mao, which was written in the constitution of the Chinese Communist Party. People cheered, "Long live Chairman Mao and eternal health to Vice Chairman Lin," for years since 1966. The Cultural Revolution exposed Lu, the so-called China's Khrushchev. The mass movement also discovered Mao's trustworthy successor, Lin. Those were the official talking points. The narrative was radical and extreme but largely consistent. In September 1971, as Lin realized that his value to Mao had diminished and he himself was becoming Mao's next target, he attempted a coup. After the plot was exposed, Lin boarded a military Trident plane to flee to Moscow, and the plane crashed in the Mongolian desert. One thing worth noting was the capacity for a totalitarian government to keep a secret when it wanted to. After such a huge political earthquake, the Chinese people, as well as the outside world, were kept in the dark for a month. However sophisticated the Chinese propaganda machine was at the time, it was just too difficult to come up with a plausible explanation. The clash between Mao and Lin was the last straw that broke the camel's back. The camel was the perceived legitimacy and the necessity of the whole political movement. A document named Project 571, homonym for Armed Uprising in Chinese, drafted by Lin's followers, called Mao the biggest feudal tyrant in Chinese history, who followed the ruthless rule of First Emperor of Qin, while using the banner of Marxism and Leninism. The document stated that no one could ever survive long under him. An honored guest in his banquet today will be a prisoner in his jail tomorrow. This was a heavy blow to Mao, and his health began to deteriorate. Something totally unexpected but hugely positive in the arena of international relations was also brewing at the time. Facing the danger of an all-round war with the Soviet Union, Mao began to adopt an old Chinese strategy of befriending a distant enemy while fighting the one next door. Through American journalist Edgar Snow, Mao sent a secret message to Nixon and invited him to visit China. Regardless of Mao's motivation, people welcomed this gigantic move, and they sensed this could be the turning point of a long political trend. When the dialogue between the two former sworn enemies began, little guys in China with Western education or contacts felt the relief. Some people were even emboldened to turn on the radio to Voice of America, with their windows open, and let the theme music of English 900 teaching program travel to the nearby streets and alleys. Lin was out and Nixon was in, all signs pointing to the wrap-up of the Cultural Revolution. But such anticipation was premature. Premier Zhou was a charismatic and pragmatic leader who studied in France and Germany in his youth. Zhou could not stem Mao's political tide, but through his administrative position and political skill, he managed to keep things in some order and prevented the country from falling off the cliff. In 1974, Mao launched another political campaign named Repudiating Lin and Confucius. The innuendo was actually clear to the politically sensitive Chinese people. Premier Zhou was the modern Confucius Mao was referring to, and the nation was deeply worried. It was almost a mathematical certainty that anyone who worked right under Mao would sooner or later become his next target to be purged. The choices of Chinese people were as limited as they had been for thousands of years. People prayed for having a good emperor. People yearned for upright and honest officials, and people hated treacherous and abusive bureaucrats. People lamented how the emperor trusted the latter, not the former. There were two left political wings that Mao relied on to launch the Cultural Revolution. Lin represented the military and Jiang, Mao's wife, was in charge of propaganda. Now Lin was gone, but the Gang of Four headed by Jiang was still rife and rampant. In 1975, one of the mouthpieces of the Gang of Four, Shanghai's mayor Zhang Chunqiao, wrote that the all-round dictatorship of the proletariat against the bourgeoisie should last for the whole historical period. People already had enough of the long political roller coaster ride, but Zhang wanted to keep it going forever. Both JL and DR were deeply concerned. They gathered to discuss it. Why does proletariat need dictatorship to rule anyway? If proletariat is the majority, would it be able to rule through democracy by definition? Zhang Chunqiao recently quoted Lenin that the cornerstone of Marxist theory is not classes' struggle, but dictatorship of the proletariat. According to Lenin, the bourgeoisie is so powerful even after they are overthrown. That implies the working class would normally follow the bourgeoisie, so that the bourgeoisie would form a de facto majority. That also implies that the party cannot trust the majority working class it is supposed to represent, so that they can justify the purge of anyone, working class or not, within or without the party, using the big stick of proletarian dictatorship. Even at the time of Roman Empire, dictatorship was meant to be temporary. If permanent, it would be called despotism. Extreme actions usually followed extreme ideology. Zhang was a theoretician, but from his words people could smell blood. His propaganda was indeed an ominous sign about the worst-case scenario of China's future. In retrospect, if the Gang of Four had seized the total power, the disaster in China could have escalated to yet another cataclysmic level. A repeat of what happened later in Cambodia under Khmer Rouge was really not a too far-fetched possibility. Deng Xiaoping was put in charge in 1974 and then deposed soon after Zhou Enlai's death in 1976, all at the whim of Mao. The pendulum swung back and forth between hope and despair. People sensed that the dire situation could further deteriorate to an unprecedented level, even worse than any time since 1966. But when they learned that Deng's replacement was Hua, a moderate, they kept a whiff of hope. The year 1976 was the year of Dragon, a year meant for political upheaval. In July, a cataclysmic earthquake on 7.8 Richter scale hit Tangshan, a populous city not far away from the capital Beijing, killing over 200,000 residents. Soon a somber voice from the radio announced that Mao passed away on September 6, at the age of 83. A few days later, Dr's father had a visitor, who was his friend, an old writer, and a party veteran. He talked in a low voice and close to the doctor's ear. Both looked excited, their faces flushing and eyes beaming. Then the writer hurried away with the cigarette still burning between his fingers. Dr. sensed something really big had happened. He turned on the shortwave radio. Through the ebb and flow of the signal, he learned that the Gang of Four had been arrested. Word of mouth traveled fast. Liquor in all stores was quickly sold out. Whatever happened had a lot to do with Mao's mode of thinking in his last few months, although no one was really sure what that was. As fragile and erratic as he was, he seemed to have control of the major events. There were reports that in June 1976, Mao expressed some doubts about his Cultural Revolution in front of Hua, his nominal successor of that day, and admitted that most were against it and only a few for it. He said only heaven knew what would happen next. In his 40s, on the road of the Long March in 1935, Mao wrote a poem with strong passion of utopian egalitarianism. Facing the awesome height of Kunlun Mountain covered with snow, he wrote he would draw a sword to cleave it into 3 pieces. One for Europe, one for America, and one to keep in the East. Peace would then reign, with the same warmth and cold throughout the globe. In his 60s, Mao was imbued with ambition and confidence. He declared in 1956 that within 50 years, China should catch up with the United States in its economic strength. If not, China would be expelled from the human race. Then he failed miserably in his economic social experiment. It was a testimony that he was no god, but a fallible human. In his 70s, Mao launched the infamous Cultural Revolution. In a state of self-doubt, he never truly took any responsibility. When there was a conflict between his power and social justice, he never hesitated to choose power. The political situation was so unpredictable and precarious. It was not inconceivable that Hua could have been ousted and Jiang could have been empowered again, only if Mao's clock had just ticked a little longer. The fate of China just narrowly but miraculously escaped the worst-case scenario. Maybe it was the strong earthquake that shook the sword off Mao's hand, JL said with a smile. You have any better explanations? Dr. asked. No, I really do not. I only care about the outcome. In the next several years things in China began to get really interesting. God seemed to have given the Chinese a second chance to rebuild their own villages, and this time they had better do a good job of it.